guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new Just Know HOA content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, "It Sounds Like Sonia Should Be in the Loony Bin." My very first place in college that I didn't rent was a townhouse condo. It was your typical cookie cutter, 3-storied, 4 to a section, little cutout of suburbia for beginners. I lived near the back of the development, which meant driving by/past the front units every day to get to and from work and school. Our Homeowners Association board president, Sonia, lived across the street from our elderly HOA treasurer, Zelda. Sonia was in her 30s and ran an illegal daycare out of her home, and I hated driving by her house after 3 p.m. or on weekends because her 2 elementary-aged kids would hide behind parked cars and run in front of your vehicle screaming, "Slow down." I got really scared after that happened a few times and only drove 5 miles per hour through there, but the little twerps kept doing it. I spoke with their mom about how unsafe jumping in front of cars was. I was driving very slowly because I was terrified and they were basically harassing me and our neighbors weekly, but Sonia said her kids were being neighborhood monitors, so I should be thankful for their diligence. What the heck? A week later around 7 p.m., after most of the residents were home, mostly young families, I pulled in after work and noticed a tow truck on the street. Then 2. Then 3. Holy poop, they were towing everyone in the neighborhood. I parked in my garage and ran upstairs to tell my roommates to move their cars from the street. They ran out and, sure enough, everyone who parked on the street was getting towed. 2 of my neighbors were fighting with the tow truck drivers, saying that they've always parked there because it's a parking area, which is indicated in our homeowners booklet. We whipped it out, but the tow truck drivers said they're just following the orders of Sonia and then left when the police showed up. Apparently, Sonia had put up home printed paper signs and signed a contract with the tow company in the middle of the day without telling anyone. That night she went out into the street with a bucket of red paint and painted the curbs. Then she had the tow company post their tow signs and no parking signs the next afternoon, eliminating street parking. After that, anyone who didn't fit in their garage had to park 3 blocks away, outside the condo units. The next straw was when 4 large evergreen trees were cut down from a communal park in the development. Zelda the treasurer found out that Sonia had paid her sideman arborist over $8,000 of HOA money to cut the trees down without any discussion or approval from the HOA board. Zelda flipped her lid and let everyone know what happened to the trees at the next HOA meeting, including how Sonia had used the funds intended for our community co-op garden. After the 6 o'clock meeting, I guess someone else on the board called Sonia to let her know that she was going to be removed from the HOA president's seat due to the unapproved expenses, towing issue, and more. Around 8 p.m. I heard screaming outside, blood-curdling female screams of, "Help! Call the police!" It was Zelda standing outside her condo, completely freaking out. Apparently, Sonia came over, punched the 70-year-old Zelda in the face, pulled her out of her own home, locked her out, and then started threatening to harm her disabled and bedridden elderly husband who was upstairs. Zelda was hysterical while I was on the phone with the police, as were 5 neighbors also standing outside. Zelda was screaming every curse word in the book through her own front door at our crazy ex-HOA president. Sonia was arrested that night for some crazy stuff like assault and holding someone hostage. Since Sonia was a single parent, her kids were taken away by relatives about an hour after Child Protective Services showed up. Zelda was left with a gnarly black eye and huge scratches on her chest where Sonia had clawed her shirt and pulled her into the haymaker. I only lived there 14 months and eventually moved due to the escalating issues with the HOA. It was quite an ordeal. Next one is titled, "I'm Not a Part of Tries to Poison My Tree." I live in a subdivision that is controlled by a HOA. I'm live in one of the very few homes that is old enough to not have to be under their thumb thanks to my parents' good thinking. I inherited their home about 7 years back, but still, They want to cause trouble. We have an admittedly fairly large tree in the front yard. It's deciduous, so around fall, autumn, the leaves go everywhere. My daughter, 6, loves to play in them, so I don't bother much with cleaning them up. It's my house, why would I? But the HOA started harassing us over the past couple of years to cut it down. Even going as far as to catch my wife on her morning runs to hound her about it. We don't even fall under their jurisdiction. I don't know if what they're doing counts as harassment, but it's sure starting to feel like it. I think they were tracking when she leaves our house, but I can't prove it. She's changed the time she goes out for runs from 6 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. back to 6 a.m. and even to 5:30 a.m., but somehow one of the main council members of the HOA is always out there to harass her about the tree. It was ridiculous at this point, and I don't know how they know when she's out and about. It's a quiet street, but it's not like she makes heaps of noise. It all came to a head last weekend when my wife was in the front yard with my daughter. She left to go turn the sprinklers on for our daughter to play in. The tap for the sprinklers is around the side of the house, so she was gone no more than a few minutes, but when she came back, the council member that had been following her was talking to our daughter. Naturally, she was wondering why this stranger to our daughter was talking to her and ran up to confront him. He claimed he was just being friendly and introducing himself to our daughter. We had been deliberately keeping him away from her because of his behavior around my wife, so it wasn't ideal, but he left. Later that night, at dinner, our daughter asked us what herbicide was. I explained to her that it kills plants, you used it in gardens. It turns out that he had asked her to convince us to kill the tree. He wanted her to go into our shed and look to see what poisons we had in the shed, or at least that's mostly what we could make out from our daughter. I think he meant for her to bring him one of ours so he didn't use one we didn't have. A toxin report on the tree would catch him out immediately. I've since put an additional numerical lock on the shed, instead of just the key one, but I can't believe he was trying to get our daughter to check our shed that's full of dangerous items over a goddamn tree. Next one is titled, Some People Just Get Off on Having Power. The president of our homeowners association was a retired military guy who loved to order people around. He would walk the neighborhood with a video camera and harass people who were too scared of the camera to defend themselves. Every possible violation, no matter how small, was a huge personal affront to him. The HOA actually took UPS to court because the trucks were supposedly over the line of the designated parking space for guest vehicles. Obviously, the delivery trucks were larger than the compact car-sized parking spots. However, the HOA somehow won. Our condo also had a ridiculously small driveway. I'm talking like 3 feet. The rules said you could not wash your car in the street, but if I angled my small car just right, I could have some of it outside to keep the water off the stuff in the garage. Well, apparently my bumper was like half an inch over the curb one day because the lady across the street ratted me out to the president, who promptly showed up, camera in hand, to chide me for this egregious act and order me to pull my car further into the garage. I was so happy to get out of that place. Next one is titled, An Awful First Month for the Newlyweds. Right after my wife and I got married, we found an apartment to move into, and although it was far from perfect, it was spacious and 2 minutes away from work. This happened during the beginning of August in South Florida. On the day we moved in, we found a letter posted from the homeowners association stating that someone had to be present in our unit while the workers were there to work on the central cooling unit. Okay, no big deal, I have the ability to work from home sometimes, so I did. Well, at the end of those first 2 days, workers were there from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We were told that the project was bigger than expected and found out exactly what was happening. They were replacing the piping of all 22 units in our complex, and we were lucky enough to have one of 2 points of access to the roof in our bedroom closet. That roof access was utilized for 24 days out of the month of August for up to 14 hours a day, so my new wife and I spent a lot of our first month of marriage alongside AC repairmen. Also, we still don't have functioning central air. Next one is titled, Before the End of the Month. Mother-in-law was fighting stage 4 ovarian cancer a few years ago. Had no desire to take down our Christmas lights. We were constantly visiting the hospital, was very touch and go. Had a child under 1. Was a very emotional time. HOA compliance officer constantly would stop at our house at all hours of the day. We had security cameras, so finally after reviewing the footage we called the guard shack to see what the emergency was. We were told that Christmas has been over for 3 weeks and we need to have our lights down before the end of the month or he would fine us $25 a day for the first week, then $50 each day after that. We explained the situation, and the guy said, "Well, it's not my problem, take your lights down." My wife exploded on the douchebag. Went to the next board meeting and let loose on the board and general manager. Turns out it wasn't a HOA policy. The guy worked for the security company that was hired to work the main entrance guard shack, and would get a bonus if he would patrol and hand out fines for HOA violations. This a-hole would just drive around and make up his own rules and fines, and by the next meeting was fired, and a new security company was hired when the contract was up in the summer. Everything worked out in the end. Douche fired, mother-in-law cancer-free for over a year. Next one is titled, Stand Up to the HOA and Win. Other way around. I helped a customer stand up to their HOA and win. I worked as a team supervisor for DirecTV at this time. Most of my duties were administrative, but if anyone on my team had an escalated call, supervisor requested, then those were my job too. One of my agents got a call, and from what he told me, the customer immediately requested a supervisor, that he needed someone with more authority than a frontline service rep, even though my agent could have handled this. So I take the call and the guy is frantic and asking me for help. He'd been going rounds with his HOA over the placement of his satellite dish. As it turned out, due to various obstructions, the only way his dish could be installed and maintain a quality signal was pole mounted. So it's on a pole in his side yard instead of on the roof/side of the house. The HOA had deemed that a violation and fined him. They then threatened further proceedings against him when he refused to pay. Something about violation of the H.O.A. covenant agreement or some such nonsense like that. They had shown up this day to further the issue, and he decided to call us and see if there was anything we could do. Oh yes, there was. I asked if I could speak to the HOA rep that was in his home, and he was more than pleased to let me handle it. After introducing myself and whatnot, I informed the HOA rep that it is a violation of federal law to deny the homeowner the placement of their dish if that is the only place it could be installed to get a high quality signal. The HOA rep instantly starts trying to tell me what's what when I just rattled off over the Air Reception Devices Rule of the Telecommunications Act 1996. What? The ATAR rule? It's a part of the act I just named that explicitly forbids the restriction of placement of a signal reception device if that is the only feasible installation option. In short, you can't make him remove it, and if you force it, he has options. I couldn't literally say he can take you to court since I'm not one of the corporate lawyers, but the point was made clear enough. He just handed the phone back to my customer and left the house. The customer was so freaking excited. You have no idea how much of a hassle this has been, fighting with them over this for months. The threats of fines, etc. Thank you so much. A victory for the little guy. Duck HOS and their power-tripping little sycophants. Last one is titled, His Dad is Still Heated About the Deck. My dad moved into a new townhouse in the summer of 2013, and it was a foreclosure property, as the previous tenants were kicked out for not paying their mortgage/homeowners association dues. Apparently, the summer before that they'd given everyone in the homeowners association new patios and decks. It was required that you had to get a new deck/patio, however, the tenants had to pay for them in monthly installments over the next 3 years in addition to their HOA dues. There was also a rule put in place when the decks were installed, which was that you couldn't move out without paying off your deck first. But since the previous tenants foreclosed on their home, the deck hadn't been paid off. My dad was told by the HOA that he would not have to pay off the deck because it was foreclosed, so it wasn't his responsibility. Sweet, free deck. he thought as he signed off the agreement. He moved in shortly thereafter, but then the HOA started sending him payment notices for the deck. He was completely confused, as they'd agreed he wasn't liable, so he fought it with the board. Even with the signed document saying that we didn't have to pay for the deck, the board went against him. He ended up having to pay off the remaining balance on the deck, and, to this day, he refuses to speak about this topic. It's a huge trigger for him. Thanks for listening.